last video I made where I was talking about how the videos I was making before were a lot more effort than I had time for. So I want to try something that's a bit more kind of, I can do it, you know, I can turn my computer on and get on with it and do it at the drop of a hat, or you know, with less preparation and less time, you know, not quite streaming, maybe streaming later, but more I can just, you know, turn the camera on, turn it off, and I'm pretty much done. So I've kind of spent the day setting up this setup that I can hopefully just use from now on, like, you know, set it up once and get going with it, and potentially do things like sort of edit on the fly, rather than edit later, because that was the thing before. It was this whole weight of, you know, I want to make videos, I want to make things and spread this information, but there's like a heavy weight of doing all the research, and got to do the research anyway, but doing all that, writing a script, writing a tight script, and filming it, doing the graphics, doing whatever sound effects, doing all that, filming it, recording the voice, then editing it all together and all that. It was just a big heavy thing. So when I thought about making a new video, it's like, this is going to take several days to make something that maybe will take 20 minutes to watch, and I just wanted to offload that heavy weight and still be able to make this kind of stuff in some way. So and I think maybe, I mean, this is going to be my first time doing it. This is kind of a test drive of whether this thing works, but this could be a way for me to get back into doing this kind of thing without that weight around my neck.
Remove the stone of shame! Woohoo!
And I hope that just worked. So yeah, that's what I mean. Hopefully I've got this thing going where I can play around with editing on the fly, and instead of, you know, taking little clips and dropping them in later with the editing and then making sure the format's right, I think I've worked something out here. So anyway, talking all this rubbish that is not to do with what the topic is, but this is how this is going to be. This is not scripted at all. I'm going to be umming and ahhing. I'm probably going to tumble over my words a bit, and there's a good chance that I'll want to talk about something and forget to say it, and I'll miss out important information because I'm winging it. I'm not. This is why I generally prefer the tight script, because I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure everything's in there, and I was like, oh no, I should have spoke about that. And if I've made a tight script and read the script and checked it, and then going back over it with editing, there's so many places where I can be like, oh, I missed that, that's got to go in, or oh, there was a tangent there that doesn't need to be in there, I could take that out. So the benefits of doing this in a more quick, off the cuff way has its disadvantages as well. But, you know, that's how this is going to have to go, and I hope this is loud enough. I'm sitting not too close to the mic. I'm going to move the mic a bit closer, so maybe that's better. But anyway, I decided my first one of these will be the best arguments for atheism. So people trying to make a case for atheism. I'm going to generally define atheism as the idea that God does not exist. I know a lot of people take atheism as a rejection of the claim that God exists, which is a bit different, but I prefer to use it in the strong sense of either the claim or the belief that God does not exist. I call the rejection, some people would call it agnostic, but I don't like that. I'll explain in a second. I prefer to call it agnostic non-theist, or just non-theist. The position where you're sitting on the fence. I'm not convinced that God exists, but I'm not convinced he doesn't either. I'd call that a non-theist rather than atheist. Yeah, so I'd say atheist was, I believe, or I strongly, whether it's strongly or weakly, that he doesn't, and that could be where some of the non-theists actually are. Like, I'm sitting on the fence, but I live my life as if he doesn't. You know, that maybe that could be that you accidentally are an atheist when you're saying you're agnostic. The reason I don't use agnostic as a term is because I don't think atheism and agnosticism are mutually exclusive, because atheism, like I say, is the claim, is about that specific claim. You've got the question, does God exist? Yes, no. And you're an atheist if you're in the no camp, whereas agnostic is about it means I don't know. So you could be an agnostic atheist who is someone who, I don't think God exists, but I'm not really sure, so I'm an agnostic atheist. So you can have that. You can have an agnostic atheist, which would be a separate thing from an agnostic non-theist, which is I don't know, and that's why I'm on the fence. So I differentiate them in that way. A lot of people would conflate those two, and that's fine if that's what they want to do. I'm just trying to clarify my terms here. If I say atheist, I mean someone who's in the camp of believing the statement God does not exist is a true statement, and not someone who's on the fence. On the fence is a non-theist, and not just an agnostic, as I explained. So when I say arguments for atheism, it would be arguments for that claim, something like premise 1, premise 2, therefore God does not exist. You want the conclusion to be along the lines of God does not exist because of this reason, to build up that positive case. So an agnostic non-theist doesn't have a case to make. They don't have a burden of proof. They don't have anything like that, because I'm on the fence. I don't know. Stop asking me questions. I haven't decided yet. Whereas if you're in the atheist camp, then you should have some reasons to be over in that camp. Although you could potentially be in the non-theist camp if you've heard some theistic arguments and thought, no, they don't work for me. So you've rejected those and kind of fallen back to the I don't know. I'm not convinced, but nothing's pushing me the other way either. I'm just on I could go either way still, even though the thing you just showed me doesn't work for me. So yeah, I'm going to be looking here at the best arguments that I think generally are considered the best arguments for atheism. So if I pull those up, here we go, boom. Yes, so I've got 3 here. Maybe you agree with these, maybe you have others. The logical problem of evil and the evidential problem of evil, they are different, if you're not aware of those. And then divine hiddenness. I'm going to look at all 3 of these. I'm going to start by saying, like I said now, just before, this is trying to make a positive case for the claim God does not exist, right? So here we have the 3 apparently best arguments for that claim, and I don't think they get you there even if they are successful, and we might talk about that later. I don't know if they'll come up, because I think this is a separate thing, but I don't actually think these get you to God does not exist. I think each of these if they're successful, they deal with a specific definition of who or what God is. So the first couple are talking about a all-loving God. So if they were successful, I don't think they are, obviously, that's why I'm here. If they are successful, they would only rule out a God who is all-loving, and maybe a God who has a personal relationship with human beings. They wouldn't have any effect on a deist God, which you could describe as a God who created the universe, created mankind, created everything, and then just sat back and watches to see what happens and doesn't get involved. None of these 3 arguments have any bearing on deism and other types of theism that might be more similar to that. So when it comes to the claim God does not exist, these three arguments, generally considered the best arguments, don't get you close. They don't get you close. At best, these deal with a particular definition of God. Maybe they get you to agnostic non-theism, but they don't do the job that they're meant to do. So it's difficult to think of atheism as a serious contender. I have started using the phrase that atheism is intellectually bankrupt because of things like this. It wasn't long ago, talking about decades, but that people started saying that the theory of evolution gave atheists intellectual permission to be atheists. Because it's like there's some scientific merit to this belief that God doesn't exist, and then that doesn't work, because you can be a Christian and believe in evolution. They are not mutually exclusive. Again, they can work together. So if you believe in evolution, you can have Christianity. If you don't believe in evolution, you can't have atheism. So atheism kind of hangs its faith on evolution. They need it. Atheism needs evolution, whereas theism doesn't. So yeah, I don't see atheism as something you can really have a lot of faith in. All the evidence seems to point. But anyway, these are the cases for atheism, and I'm babbling on about all sorts of other things instead of getting on with it, which is something I get frustrated when other people do. So why am I doing it? Let's get straight into it. Let's not make this video 5 hours long. Let's try and keep it within an hour, if we can. So let's start at the top. The problem of evil, the logical problem of evil first. We'll do this one first, and you'll probably see why in a moment. So we've got the two premises. This is a syllogism. How this works, if you've never seen one before, is you've got premise 1, premise 2, sometimes you have more premises, and it's kind of like doing maths but with words. So if the two premises add up together and they make the conclusion, so they all work, that's valid. Now I'm forgetting the terminology now that I should know. No, it's sound. Is sound or valid? I need to double check that. This is why I prefer scripts, because okay, but yeah. So if the maths works, then that's good, and then if P1 is true, then and P2 is true, and we know the maths of it works, that means the conclusion must be true. So the two premises become evidence for the conclusion. So if the maths works, it's sound, and if the two premises are true, that means it's valid, and then that means the conclusion is true. And I might be getting sound and valid mixed up. This is why I knew I should have had a cup of tea before I started this, because I should know that basic fact, and this bodes well for the rest of the thing. So anyway, logical problem of evil here. You've got it up on the screen there. It says basically that evil and God are contradictory. They can't exist together. If God exists, he would be getting rid of all the evil. Evil should not be a thing. And this, really, nobody uses this argument anymore. And in philosophical circles, it's been just completely roundly debunked, because generally people realize there is no incompatibility there. Something's a contradiction. Something is incompatible if it's a case of trying to say something is X and something is not X at the same time. That's a contradiction. Something is up and something is down at the same time. It's opposite, trying to be two things. It can't be at the same time. That would be a contradiction. So things like the classic one is a square circle. A square is a shape with four parallel sides, four 90-degree angles, and a circle is something with the continuing line, the circumference, the diameter. So those are two things with properties that just cannot possibly go together. That's a contradiction, and that's what they're trying to do here. But as I say, nowadays, people know that the existence of God and the existence of evil are not contradictions. One simple way of doing that is maybe God himself is evil, which I think people like Stephen Law put as a rebuttal to. I don't think he believes in an evil God, but he says that's a possibility. So in that case, evil and God could exist together. The Christian view, though, generally would be that God allows evil to exist for a greater good. So the point is, allowing evil, there are reasons for it, and those reasons outweigh the problems that evil will cause. So the brief biblical answer is that they don't put it exactly how I'm going to put it now, but this is the point. We live on this planet for an average of 80 years, something like that, and then if we die and go to heaven for eternity, that 80 years that has suffering in it will seem like nothing. It'll be a distant memory, and it'll be vastly outweighed by the eternity of heaven, paradise, all goodness, the pain and sin and temptation, everything all washed away, no more. Death is no more. All of that's gone. It'll be kind of like when you go to the doctors and they give you a little injection in your arm. It's a pinprick that hurts for a few seconds, but it saves you from whatever illness was going to be a lot worse, you see. So that pinprick, that second, you didn't enjoy that, but you prefer that to whatever years you were going to have of coughing things up and being ill. And if you weigh those two against each other, you prefer the pinprick. So that's kind of the biblical description of what's going on. We've got the short little life with pain in it, weighed against eternity of wonderful things, and we're building up to that in this life. So yeah, the only thing we need is for God to have one good reason to allow evil to exist, and that means there's no contradiction. You only need one good reason. We can't explain every specific thing that goes on to people, but we've got lots of general answers. So the first one most people go to is the concept of free will. So we have free choices to do things. God gives us this choice to do good or do evil. And it's framed in a way of, if you're choosing good, then you're choosing him. If you're choosing evil, you're choosing not him. So it's this whole, all through the Bible, it's this call to follow me, follow my commands, because they are the good things. And you want to be a good person, so do the good things. And then if you do the good things, you can come to heaven. And well, that's not exactly how it works. That sounds like you earn your way in, but it's you're in line with God's plan. You're in line with heavenly ideals, and yeah. So so free will. The whole point is you get a choice. Do you want to be good? Do you want to follow God, who is goodness, or do you want to go your own way? And if you go your own way, do your own thing, you've got the choice to do that. But the thing is, everything that so in Christianity, God and goodness are basically interchangeable terms. God is the embodiment of goodness. If goodness was a person, it would be who God is. So anything that's not in line with God and His ways would just necessarily be evil or bad, because it's outside of goodness. It's you've got good things and you've got not good things. So all the good things are in God and all the not good things are outside of Him. So if you're choosing the things that are outside of Him, and that has consequences. So there's your free will. He's given us this free will because He wants us to have this free choice to choose Him. We can't be coerced. It can't. He wants this relationship with us. So if He forces it on us, then that's more like a kind of slavery or something. But He wants to call us, and we come through our free choice. This is why I'm not a Calvinist. I don't know how the gospel makes any sense to Calvinists, when I think free will is so at the core of it. This choice God gives us. God says, do you want to be with me or not? And you choose. I don't know how taking that out of the gospel, how any of the rest of it makes sense. But then if people are choosing not God, or they're choosing to do evil, then that has repercussions, and that can hurt people, that can hurt themselves, that can do damage to society. And the thing about this gift of free will is, if God doesn't let people choose, if God is letting people choose evil and He doesn't let the actions play out, then He's not really giving you the free will. He's kind of saying, oh, you can make the choice. Oh no, I take it back because you chose the wrong thing. That's not really letting it. He has to let it play out. He has to let it happen. But the Bible also teaches God takes bad things and uses them for good. So those bad situations people can find them in. A lot of people know that the best lessons are learned through mistakes or through difficult times or things like that. You go through a hard time and you come out with it. You learn a lesson, and hopefully you become a stronger, better, wiser person for it. And that's just a commonly known thing that happens. If you just kind of stay in your comfort zone forever, you don't grow. You don't achieve anything. So this is what we call soul building, or on a human level, you could call it character building. You just become a better person by being faced with challenges and difficulties. And we don't want the challenges and difficulties all the time, but when we get through them, there is that sort of sense of accomplishment. Along with this is the fact that Christianity is very virtue based. It says, it teaches about things that these are the virtuous things to be, virtuous ways of being, and a lot of these things couldn't come about without darkness in the world. So, for example, you couldn't be brave if there wasn't things to be scared of. You couldn't be charitable and generous if there weren't people that needed things. And so on, things like that. These greater goods, these qualities of a person, you can't get them without having the challenge in front of you. So you have that soul building. So there we've got two reasons there that God and evil can go together. You've got free will, the necessary choices, and the soul building, and that covers most things. Obviously, it's difficult to get into specific. So, like for example, people might say, "Well, someone gets ill and dies. What do they learn from that?" It's like, well, maybe the lesson wasn't for them specifically. Maybe the lesson was for someone else who can look at what made them ill, who can then study it and make a vaccine or a medicine and build a hospital. And the one person who learns from someone else is the person who has this like domino effect that makes this great thing. They make a whole foundation and a big charity, and they're helping so many people. So one person, I think that's the problem a lot of people have with this soul building thing, is they think, I'm having problems, but I didn't learn from it, so this doesn't make sense. but it doesn't have to be that you have a problem, you learn from it. It could be you have a problem, someone else learns from it, and then you have the domino effect, the butterfly effect, where it kind of expands and becomes something greater, not necessarily through you, but through someone responding to you or people like you. So there's those two reasons, and another reason I think is important is this, because we have the free choice. God gives us this free choice of, do you want to choose him or do you want to choose not him? Then he has to let us see what not him looks like, so we have an informed choice. Because he can tell us, look, oh yeah, come with me and we'll be in heaven forever, and we'll have a great time, everything will be perfect, everything will be paradise, it will be marvelous, promise, and not show you anything else. Or you can say, yeah, this is what I'm offering, and the alternative is, if you don't come to all the good stuff, I mean, that's what the opposite looks like, and you can see what the opposite looks like. Do you want that? Is that what you really want? I mean, no, probably not, so stay away from that. But people still choose it anyway, and then for some reason want to blame God for that. So I kind of like to have this picture of, there's that kid's song was that he's got the whole world in his hands. Because the Bible teaches that God sustains the world, God sustains the universe, and you can kind of imagine like he's got it clasped in his hands, like, I'm looking after this, I'm looking after this. But in order to show us what it would be like if he wasn't holding on to it, he kind of just lets go a little bit, lets a few cracks in, lets a bit of the darkness in. So he's mostly there, like, yeah, I've got it, don't worry. But just let a little bit of that through, just so you can see what it'd be like if I wasn't here. Because you've got to have the free choice, right? I want to give you the free choice to come with me or not come with me, but so it's an informed choice. Just have a look over there, stay out of the shadows, that kind of thing. So yeah, I've given a few reasons there why evil and God are not contradictory, and that's why the logical problem of evil has been long abandoned. So let's move on from that and go to the evidential, which is the one that people tend to use now. So it's slightly different. It's similar but different enough. So instead of saying evil exists generally, people want to say, okay, we admit, yeah, there's got to be some evil for those reasons and others, but it doesn't have to be quite so much. It doesn't have to be quite so much of it. Could he have just cut some of it away? Surely he didn't need all of it. There's a lot, and some of it is really, really bad. They like to use the word horrendous. And there's always this example that they give of saying, think of a baby deer. There's a forest fire, a tree's fallen down and landed on the deer, and the deer is trapped under this log. Its leg's broken now, it's panicking, it's nervous, it's scared, and it can see the forest fire coming towards it, and it's got no hope. Did we need that to happen? That's usually what they'll go with, something like that. And obviously that's a hypothetical situation, it's not like a factual, like, this happened, here's the video. It's something you can easily imagine has happened. It probably has happened, maybe it has happened. So it's kind of painting this emotional picture to kind of get you, oh yeah, no, we didn't need to hurt the baby deer. That's not good. Yeah, he could have got away with not doing that. Why did he need to do that? Nobody. It's kind of like the thing of the question of, if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a noise? It's like, well, there's no one around to hear it. So did it actually happen? Who did it affect? And that's the thing with the deer, is that nobody's learning from that deer. Nobody's getting any soul building from that deer, because no one's around to see it, and it's on its own, and it didn't leave a memoir behind. But like I said earlier, it's not always about your suffering is your own personal soul building. It could be that is someone else's. and it might not be that specific deer is part of a bigger picture of a forest fire, and people need to be more careful about forest fire. Like, we must protect the forest as in general, and if we protect the forest and make sure fires don't happen, then this thing won't happen, and the world will be better for it. So there's a sort of a very quick answer for that specific situation. Um, but it's this idea generally, rather than that specific scenario, of um, surely there are some things that were so bad that they were unnecessary. Um, lots of people will use people who end their own lives as an example. It's like, well, they didn't learn anything because they decided that things were so bad they're just going to quit. But again, same thing. We hear about people doing that, and so we want to do things to prevent that and improve mental health and so on. That's on other people's, and if we get it right, we can soul build the people that are in those situations. So it's getting out of this idea that everybody struggles and the soul building is for them personally. It's not necessarily that. It could be for someone else. So this is the better argument because it works on a sort of probability thing. They tend to say things like, there's all this evil, some of it is so bad, surely out of all the bad things, all the evil things, all the suffering, at least one of these things wasn't necessary for whatever greater good God is planning. And if one of them wasn't necessary, then that means we've got a problem. We've got some kind of contradiction going on, because God wouldn't allow for this unnecessary suffering. Because we've admitted after we don't use the logical problem of evil anymore, because we agree with you. God and evil can coexist, but any evil that exists has to have a greater good attached. And we think that although we agree with that principle, it doesn't play out in reality. There's going to be some things that were just so bad they didn't need to happen, and they might point to certain world events, the Twin Towers, the Holocaust. Like these are so terrible, and of course they were. But did they actually have to happen? And my response to that is yes, that you could take those and certain other things as the worst examples of bad things happening in the world, and that's what we can take from. We can see that that's the worst thing. That's the worst thing. That's as bad as it could get, and we don't want that. We want to avoid that. So we take steps to avoid that. But if God did something like he knew they were going to happen and he stepped in and did something to stop them from happening, we as the human race would have no awareness of those things. We would think something else. So we don't know what they are. So we might think it would kind of go down a peg. The next worst thing, we might think, oh, serial killers, Jack the Ripper, and so on. Yeah, this one person going around killing multiple people. That's the worst thing that exists. God could have just stopped Jack the Ripper. Why do we need Jack the Ripper doing things? That's terrible. So, okay, so God takes it down a peg, deletes Jack the Ripper from history, and now we've got just people that do one murder at a time. Someone murder. That's the worst thing that could possibly be done in the whole. Like, oh, I mean, I understand paper cuts are quite bad, but I don't like those. But murder, that's just another level. But like, you see, taking it. If God was taking these things away, if the worst thing we could possibly think of as one person murdering someone else, we would have no concept in our imagination of something like Nazi Germany. We couldn't imagine how bad that was. So it's a possibility that because we have seen that level of horror, there could be another level of horror above that we have been protected from, that we just don't have the imagination to think of. Or if we do have that, in the Marvel movies, we've got the Thanos snap where he just clicks and half the universe's population disappears. Maybe that's, you could call that worse, but that hasn't actually happened. Maybe there was some galactic being that was going to do something like that, and God stopped it. But we don't know, and it's kind of speculation. So like I say, we could start at the top with those absolutely horrific historical things. We could go, so God gets rid of those. And now the worst thing we can think of is a serial killer. God gets rid of those. The next thing we can think of is a one-off murderer. God gets rid of those. Then the next thing we can think of is like shoplifters. Shoplifters are the worst thing. God gets rid of those. Oh no, paper cuts are the worst thing in the world. I just sting so much. I mean, I understand God giving me some difficulty with paying taxes or something, but how could he let this happen? How could he? This is the worst thing that's ever happened to anybody, and because of our comprehension of things, that will be our maximum. But so I'm hoping that's making sense. So I think, yeah, the horror we do see is the minimum that is required for this plan that gives us access to free will and enough soul building so that we can be fully realized people who, when it comes to making that choice, do we want to be with God or do we not want to be, will be informed and will be fully grown as people. Because this whole thing in the Christian view is that we are supposed to be we're not there to be. God could have just created mindless drones who love Him without any thought, without any. But then that would be like creating these slave robots, and it's not real. If you just build something that loves you without any question, without any thought, that's not as rich as creating something that, okay, here's all, you've got all the choices and everything, you can figure it all out yourself. I'm going to give you some guidance. I'm going to let you grow, and then it's down to you. You get to choose. And a loving relationship isn't something that's coerced or forced or built. If you build a slave robot that just adores you all the time and it cannot possibly do anything else, that's not real love, is it? That's not a relationship, that's just control. So the way God's done it is allowed for a real loving relationship with real choice involved, and people coming to Him because they chose to be with Him and they want it, and then at that point sin and temptation and evil will be washed away. So that's the thing. So this argument here is all about, maybe there's something that we didn't need and we'd get the same result. And I just think that's a speculation that is it's one of those things where it's like the only way you could possibly know that is if you had the mind of God yourself, if you had this omnipotent mind yourself, and you could know every possible outcome. Because like I said before, there's a butterfly effect and domino effect of a bad thing happening and leading on to more good things happening. So there's no calculation you could possibly do that's like, I've looked at every outcome here and I found out that the bad outweighs the good on this decision here, and so therefore God is not real. I don't see that it's remotely possible to do that calculation. And because there are good reasons to believe that God has a greater good in mind with all these things going on, I don't think this like outside chance that one thing that's happened is so bad. I just don't think this lands either. It's just a probability thing without any. It's like, people playing the lottery. You buy one ticket and there's like a 1 in a billion chance you're going to win, and you think, yeah, but there's still a chance. It's not really that strong a chance, is it? So yeah, I don't think the evidential argument works. Also, coming back to, in connection to both of those, we have, this is an argument for theism, the moral argument. If God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. Objective moral values do exist, and therefore God exists. And now, this is a problem for both of the problem of evil arguments, because the problem of evil is all about, well, evil exists, so God can't. But the moral argument says, well, if evil exists, then God must exist, because you can't have these moral values like good and evil if there's no God to be the standard. It's an often misunderstood argument. A lot of people are, oh, are you saying I can't be a good person because I'm an atheist? No, you can. Of course you can. It's just if atheism is true, not if you are a believing atheist. If atheism, the view that God does not exist, is true, there can be no moral values. There's no measuring stick, there's no yardstick, barometer, whatever. There's no way of measuring what is good and what is evil if God is not real. I'm going to try and do this as briefly as possible. So how do we know what the difference is between good and evil? So we might say generally, like, oh, it's what makes other people happy. Like, okay, so then why is making people happy a good thing? What's so great about people? Because really, when it comes to it, like, we live as a society, and it might work on us on a societal level. Like, okay, we're gonna do better if we look after each other. We can work this stuff out, like, because maybe on a sort of selfish level, like, I want to have a long, healthy life, and if I help everyone around me have a long, healthy life, then, and we're all doing that, then we're all going to have a long, healthy life, and we're all going to be happier, and we'll just enjoy our lives more. But that's kind of all it is how much can we enjoy this? It's not, is it actually good? Is it actually the correct thing in reality? Because we don't know. It could be that human beings are a parasite on this planet, and the more we look after ourselves, and the more we grow and flourish and take the resources from the planet, and we're the world's most deadly hunter, and we all this pollution we're pumping into, we could actually be a problem. Maybe we shouldn't be looking after us. We should be maybe the planet itself as a whole is more important than just us weird creatures scurrying around on top of it, and the atheist worldview doesn't have a way of telling us that no, humans are valuable or important or have meaning. They want to claim that meaning, and you can on a subjective level, like oh, I love this person, they are very meaningful to me, they are important to me. But if you take away that "to me," they are very important, it doesn't hold any meaning anymore. It's like, no, it's so everything becomes a case of human opinion versus fact. So like something like the law of gravity is a fact. No, you have something, and you let it go, it falls, and no matter how hard I try, no matter how much I want it to, it's always gonna fall. My little red dinosaur that is here for some reason will always fall when I drop it. And I can't wish it not to. I can't, that's just a fact. So that's an objective fact of reality. So if moral values are objective in the same way, that means we can't disagree with it. It doesn't matter if 100% of the population think gravity doesn't exist. It will still exist, and it will still do what it does. Whereas the alternative is opinion. Chocolate ice cream is better than strawberry ice cream. I might think that. Other people might think strawberry is better. But both of our opinions are equally valid. There's not really an argument to be had there. It's like my taste buds enjoy chocolate more than the strawberry, and this other person's taste buds enjoy the strawberry more than the chocolate. Nobody's wrong, nobody's right. It's just our own opinion, and they're both valid. So, what are morals? Are they like gravity, where we can't argue with them? but we can work it out and find that there is a truth, or is it like ice cream where we can all have our own ideas and we can't argue with each other because they're all as equally valid as each other's, because there is no real answer. And an atheistic universe, it's the ice cream and strawberry. There's no real answer, so we have to go with making up this goal of like, yes, human flourishing, human well-being, human happiness, but that's all very, speciesist. It's like we're deciding that humans are the most important thing, and so we should be doing everything we can to make sure the humans are happy and growing and flourishing. But even that itself has loads of problems. Like, what does flourishing mean? Does it mean like the most amount of humans? Or does it mean, we could get rid of a large amount of the population so that we could all be more wealthy with we'd all have access to more resources because there's less of us. Maybe that's the best way for us to flourish. So that's a whole mess. But yeah, but if you've got God, and like I said earlier, the general concept in Christianity is that God and goodness are identical. You could take the name God out, drop it, and put goodness there every time, and imagine goodness is a person, and it's the exact same thing. Like when it says God is love, God is mercy, and all these. He is these things. These are intrinsic to him. They're not qualities he has. Like you might say, I am wonderful, but I am not the concept of wonder, but God is. God actually is that thing. If it's a solid, concrete thing, that's what he is. If you're talking about me or another person, it's an adjective that's about our character, but with him, it's like, no, he is identical to that thing. Yeah. So if you've got that, then you can do it as a sort of God is 100% goodness, and I don't know, Satan is 0% goodness, just argument's sake. And then you can put anything else along this line. You could put people there, maybe, or you could put specific actions. So murder is going to be right down like 0% goodness. Doing the laundry might be kind of somewhere in the middle, like maybe it's like 60% goodness, or something like that. Giving money to charity, 80% goodness. It's like you can give it a score along the line, so there's a value, an actual value, like a number value. So you've got this objective thing, a real thing, a factual thing, and you can put a value, numerical value on it, like measure it, like you've got a ruler. I don't have a ruler to hand, but like you've got the 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, all the numbers on it. Like this is what a measurement is, so we can measure the values in an objective way. Obviously, it's a bit more vague than that because we don't actually have like a measuring stick, but it's the principle of it. If God is 100%, everything else can be kind of contrasted against that 100%. But in atheism, there is no 100% thing. There is nothing to measure against. Our entire universe is technically pointless because we've got the Big Bang Theory to say it had a beginning, and we're going to have a heat death, so it will have an end when everything is destroyed. Everything burns out, everything freezes out. There's no way for anything to create new stars, which will create new planets, which could create new life. Maybe that can't happen anymore. You get the heat death of the universe. The universe is over. It was alive for billions and billions of years. The things inside it might have had a good time while they were there or not, but none of it actually mattered. Whereas with God, you've got the eternal meaning, like we've seen before. You build your soul, you become a good person. God eventually washes away all your temptation to sin and your sinful natures, and you become the best possible version of yourself. And then you live for eternity in paradise. And no, that's a goal. That's something. That's the perfect, best thing ever. that gets you the flourishing and the happiness and everything and all that as well, all wrapped up in there, and it lasts forever. It has eternal meaning, and all of the suffering you lived through in your life was building up to that. It was important for that, so all of that had meaning too. Um, so that's why any problem of evil doesn't really work, because it just shoots itself in the foot when the moral argument exists. You can't have evil without God. So what atheists then tend to say, let me take a moment to breathe, because I think I just did that all in one breath. They would say, oh well, the problem of evil though is a internal critique of Christianity or theistic views. We don't have to posit. You guys are the ones positing God and evil. You're the ones that want to put them together in the same worldview. We don't need. We don't have them in ours. We don't have evil. We don't have God. But I kind of think that becomes a problem, because they want to put this contradiction into Christianity, which, as I've given explanations, they don't contradict, and they actually make a lot of sense together. Especially in Christianity, they might be a problem for some other theistic views, especially if for some reason you think God is like a celestial genie who, like, whenever you pray and you ask for something, he will grant your wishes, or if he will always protect you from danger. He's a universal safety blanket, so if you get in trouble, he's just going to put a shield up in front of you and make sure you get out of it safely. If your belief system is something like that, then yeah, it's going to be a problem. Believing in like karma, it could be a problem for that, because good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. That doesn't seem to play out in real life. Whereas the Christian view is, yes, bad things will happen to good people, and there is a reason for it. And if Jesus himself had to be humiliated and go through possibly the worst torture and execution ever devised by human beings, that's God himself on the cross. If God himself went through it, then why do we individually think we'll get away without anything? Jesus and a lot of the prophets had bad times. Paul the apostle, he went around spreading the word and got beaten up so many times for doing so. So it's a weird thing if you're a Christian to think like it's all going to be sunshine and roses, because that's not what it teaches at all. So there's no contradiction within the worldview. But so if you're an atheist, it's that you've got this. Okay, you can't have both. So we're going to posit evil exists, but then on their own worldview, evil doesn't exist. So if they say they dismantle the argument. Like, okay, you can't have God and evil, so you can't have Christianity. So, okay, so we'll have atheism then. How does that work? Oh, we don't have God or evil. I'm like, oh, what? I don't know why there's a problem. Like, it doesn't. So why are you saying that your argument was based on evil exists? You're putting that forward, so you need to have evil, surely. So your view gets rid of God, and you want to keep hold of evil, so you can contradict it with God. But your worldview doesn't have evil in it. So why have we? Because you could possibly have a world where God exists but evil doesn't. That actually makes more sense. Like, we could potentially say that good and evil are just God's subjective moral decisions. And evil isn't a real thing. That's a possible theory that makes some sense, but evil without God doesn't work, and you needed evil in the argument to dismantle. So what I'm saying is, because the moral argument works, it kind of makes any problem of evil implode. So I don't know how long I've been speaking on those, but It's just they're just not good arguments for all the reasons I've listed. So I'm going to stop on those, and I'm hoping I've said enough on those two, and I don't think of something else later that I needed to say. I'm going to actually move on to the third and final one for today, divine hiddenness, which I actually think is possibly the most difficult of the three. Which is interesting because a lot of people will be like, oh, the problem of evil, that's kind of made all religion false for so long. It's like, no, it hasn't, because it's rubbish. And this one doesn't get quite as much hype. I think this one's the strongest. So this is the idea that if God exists, he wants a relationship with us. So where is he then? Why isn't he kind of coming and making a fuss and making himself known so we can have this relationship? So this gets tied in with this idea of non-resistant non-believers. So it's kind of common among a lot of Christians to say this thing like, if you're an atheist because you're a rebel and you don't want God and you hate him. And that's not always the case. That's not, like, there are some that would like it to be true. Like Alex O'Connor is one of the biggest names going around at the moment, and he's regularly said, "No, I would like Christianity to be true, but I'm just not convinced, and I can't help that." So it's this kind of idea of like, I would like it to be true, but the evidence isn't getting me there. And if God exists, he should know what it would take to convince me, and if he knows I want to be there and he wants me, then why isn't he showing me that particular thing that would work for me? So yeah, this is an argument that's got some merit to it, I think, because it's easy to say like, oh, atheists are all rebels and all evil and they don't want him and that's why God leaves them alone. That's really easy. But when you've got the types that are like, oh, I would quite like it. I would like to be in the Christian club. I'd like to, but I can't believe in these fairy tales, because I'm rational and all that. Which is, it seems fair. If you've been given these arguments and they haven't clicked for you, then what's going on? So I was just saying about how I really don't like the type that's like, oh yes, no, they're evil and it's not that, but I think possibly in a lot of these cases they might genuinely want it to be true, but there might be something else that's a barrier. So it's not an intellectual barrier that's the problem, or maybe it is an intellectual barrier for some. Maybe they haven't had the arguments explained to them properly. Maybe I think there's something else that's the hurdle, something deeper, and it could be a political belief that is not in line with biblical teaching or something. Because I think you do tend to find that atheists are very left-leaning, and I consider myself slightly left-leaning, sort of left of centre, probably more centre. But once you get, properly in the left-wing camp, then there's kind of things in the Bible that they'll feel really pushes against these other deeply held beliefs they had, and it could be an internal struggle of, well, if I accept that God exists and Christianity is true, I'm going to have to accept these political beliefs that I've disagreed with for however many years, and that might not be a conscious thing that they're doing, but it might be sort of at the back of their mind holding them back for some reason. And I'm only speculating here. I'm not like accusing anyone of anything, and it probably isn't the case with everybody, but what I think could be the problem is that there is something, whatever it is, there's something that's a hurdle for them, either emotionally, intellectually, maybe a past trauma, maybe they grew up with religious people or people that claim to be religious but they didn't act religious, so that's the idea they have of religious people, and it's like, I don't want to be one of those even if the evidence is coming my way. um, and so I think this probably, whatever this is a very individual thing. um, so when it comes to people like Alex O'Connor and some others, maybe with them, you can see that they're seeking, and you can see that they're talking to people, and you can see that they're not idle at all. So maybe what they are, like a few decades ago, we had Anthony Flew, who was the Richard Dawkins of his day, who was like the poster boy for atheism, who was the #1 world's atheist, made lots of people atheists because they believed in the things he was talking about. And then later in his life, he was convinced that God exists, and maybe it's one of those soul building things that's a butterfly effect. Like, he spent his whole life working with these arguments, and then if this guy converts, that's a problem for the community. That's like, oh wow, our leader, shall we say, has joined the other side. Maybe we've all had it. Maybe all of us have had it wrong this whole time. What changed his mind? And then they all, or a lot of people, might follow suit. Like, okay, we've always thought he was a smart guy. We'll go with him. So it could be, we've had very recently Richard Dawkins, who is like the first name people think of for atheists. He's been a lot kinder to Christianity lately, saying like, yeah, we need to bring some of these values back because it's a buffer against worse things. And I don't know if he's going to convert, but it's, again, if he did convert, that would be huge. Like, this guy who's been fighting religion all his life suddenly realizes, oh wow, this is true, or at least, oh wow, there is something to this. Maybe the people that were in his camp are also going to have that mindset change. So it could be that. It could be God has to hold off on giving them that information until he's got enough people that are going to come down as dominoes with him. Could be something like that. It could be on the individual level, that there's some other lesson they need to learn first, some other understanding they need to get first before they can get there. Who knows? I think, like these people say, like, if God knows what it will take to convince me, why hasn't he done it? It's like, maybe he's doing it, but it's just not on your schedule. Maybe it's further down the line, and he knows what he's doing. I don't. I mean, that is speculation. It is, but it's a possibility. But then on the other side of it is this idea that, how hidden is God really? There's lots of us who have said, we've had experiences, we've had answered prayers, so on. Of all the millions, billions of people alive and who've been through history, only one answered prayer needs to be genuine. Only one vision or voice, or only one of those has to be real, and then the whole thing's real. So if people were looking at that evidential argument for suffering and thinking that was a good argument, I think we've got a better one. We've got a better one that outweighs it. Of all the billions of prayers throughout history, only one of them needs to have actually been answered, and God's real. Only one near-death experience needs to have been a real experience, and God's real. Just odds are, based on those so many experiences, that it's true. And then, how hidden is this God who's given us the Bible, who's given us this scripture, is full of prophecy that's been revealed and fulfilled, and the Bible itself has stories in it of God coming down in person and speaking to people. Jesus himself is God incarnate, so that's a full life led. But before Jesus, in the Old Testament, there's numerous times you've got Adam and Eve walking in the garden with him. You've got Abraham talking to him. You've got Moses meeting with him face to face. Samson's parents. Jacob wrestles with him. Joshua meets him in the desert before he goes on his campaign. There's so many times where he's been there in person in this, and the story in the Bible seems to have this idea of like the Israelites kind of choosing to kind of take a step back themselves, and God respecting that. So things like, they were a theocracy, God was their leader, but then they were saying, oh, all the other countries around us have got human kings, we want a human king. So God's like, well, I'm your king, what's wrong with me? Like, no, we want a human king. Oh, all right, have a human king then. And that kind of makes a little separation. And so there's all these little things that kind of push this separation, and God respects that separation that we've chosen for ourselves. And he says, knock on the door and I'll be there. But all that has to be genuine, and it's we're not meant to test, like, oh, he's not a scientific experiment, he's someone who wants a relationship, and it's a whole different way of going about things. So non-resistant non-believers, I think, maybe are just, you can be one, but I think it's a temporary state of being. Eventually, if you're non-resistant, you will be a believer, and there is a possibility that doesn't happen in this life. Maybe it happens on Judgment Day. The Revelation talks about the separation of the goats and the sheep, where that's, some people are going towards and some people are going away, and it should be their free choice. So it could be that's, that you get a final chance then, if you wanted it to be true but you were never intellectually convinced. That's not going to be held against you, because maybe the reason you're not intellectually convinced is that someone didn't explain it to you very well, or they got things mixed up, and it might not be your fault. So the intention is, it's always about the intention. It's not like, if you want to learn, if you want to be a good person, if you want to be in the club, and you're doing what you can to be in line with goodness, that's what you're supposed to be doing. So I don't think God's going to punish someone just because someone else lied to them. It's like the whole thing of, what about the people that never heard of Jesus? Well, they get judged based on their own revelation of what it means to be a good person. We've heard this a lot. Saved by grace. People in the Old Testament hadn't heard of Jesus. They had their own different. It's not about knowing Jesus specifically. It's about knowing God and goodness, and being in line, walking with God and goodness. So even though this one is the most difficult one to kind of deal with, I think it's also quite speculative. And again, like I said at the beginning, it doesn't get you to the fact that God does not exist, only gets you to agnostic non-theism. Because a deist God could exist, and then if it's possible that a deist God exists, that this mind, spiritual creature created the universe, then we can think about the reasons for why they might allow this type of thing. There's way more in favour of believing than not. So and there we have it. I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. I'm hoping I've said everything that needs to be said. I would like to do these more scripted sometime, more tight, and make sure I've uncovered every stone. Oh, yeah, that reminds me. Yeah, the reason for the name of this series, I don't think I mentioned at the beginning. I was talking about that's when I was going to play the Simpsons thing. Because seeing the whole editing process is a big, heavy stone that kind of weighs you down and stops you doing this stuff. And this kind of just turning on the webcam and going rolls away the stone, which is a pun on, or a play with, the Jesus' resurrection, Lazarus's resuscitation, and it's also a good rock song by Mott the Hoople. So it all works out really nicely. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Hoped I can do some more of these in the future now that I've got this whole setup going. See you next time. Amen.